Daniel Adebayo did not fall in love with Mira Lawson all at once. That was the problem. Welcome to my channel today, sit tight and enjoy. They met in their second year at the university, the kind of accidental meeting that never announces its importance. Mira was sitting on the steps outside the faculty building, surrounded by books she pretended to understand. Daniel was running late, confidence intact even as deadlines chased him. "You've been staring at that page for 10 minutes, he said, stopping in front of her. "Either it's staring back, or you're losing." Mira looked up, startled, then smiled. "I'm definitely losing." He sat beside her without asking, close enough that their arms brushed. He explained the concept quickly, effortlessly, like someone who had never doubted his place in the world. Mira listened, not just to his words, but to the ease in his voice. From that day on, Daniel became constant. Not intentionally, not romantically, just there. They studied together, laughed together, survived exams together. When Daniel spoke about his future, Mira listened as if it were her own. When Mira worried, Daniel dismissed her fears with certainty that felt like safety. And slowly, quietly, she fell in love. Not the dramatic kind, not the kind that demands to be seen. The kind that waits. Years passed in moments that almost meant something. Daniel falling asleep on her shoulder in the library at 2 a.m., his weight warm and trusting. Mira staying perfectly still, afraid movement would wake him. Daniel calling Mira first whenever something good happened. Mira being the last person he thought of before sleep, and the first he forgot when ambition called. There were nights they walked across campus with shared earphones, shoulders brushing, fingers close but never touching. Mira memorized the shape of his laughter, the way his eyes lit up when he spoke about success. Daniel memorized nothing, because he assumed she would always be there. "I'm not doing relationships," Daniel said one night as they lay on the grass watching the stars. "Not until I've made something of myself." Mira nodded, heart sinking quietly. That makes sense. He didn't hear what she didn't say. She supported him through everything. Failed interviews, big dreams, bigger disappointments. She was present in ways that went unnoticed because they were reliable. And Daniel loved her comfort, loved her loyalty, loved her presence. He just didn't love her. By the time they graduated, people assumed they were together. They weren't. Mira attended his graduation ceremony with pride that felt like ownership, even though she had no claim. Daniel hugged her afterward, long and tight. "I couldn't have done this without you," he said. She smiled and believed it mattered. As adulthood crept in, Daniel became busier. Calls shortened, plans postponed. Mira adjusted without complaint. She learned how to miss him quietly. Some nights she typed messages she never sent. "I think I love you. Do you ever think about us? Am I just convenient to you?" She deleted them all. The confession came on a rooftop, months later, after years of courage gathering itself. "Have you ever wondered if we could be more?" she asked him, voice steady despite the storm inside her. Daniel turned, surprised, not cruel, just unprepared. He studied her as though seeing her properly for the first time. And still, nothing clicked. "Mira," he said gently, "you're important to me. I just don't feel that way." The words were soft. The impact was not. She nodded, smiled, thanked him for his honesty. He felt relieved. He believed he had done the right thing. That night, Mira cried without sound, mourning not just rejection, but the years she had given to loving someone who never knew. Daniel walked away, thinking nothing had really changed. He didn't know this was the moment everything began to unravel. Because if only he knew. Love doesn't always leave loudly. Sometimes, It simply stops waiting. Mira Lawson did not disappear dramatically. She did not announce her exit, did not demand explanations, did not rewrite history to punish Daniel Adebayo for not loving her back. She simply stepped away. At first, Daniel did not notice. Why would he? Mira had always been constant. She was the background music of his life, always playing, never demanding attention. So when the calls slowed, when the replies took longer, when her laughter was no longer immediately available, he assumed she was busy. Or tired. Or growing up. Which, in a way, she was. Mira stopped waiting for Daniel to make time. She stopped rearranging her schedule for his convenience. She stopped filling the silence he didn't realize he left behind. When Daniel texted, she replied, politely. Warmly. But briefly. No emojis. No late-night conversations. No emotional anchoring. It unsettled him in a way he couldn't name. He told himself it was nothing. Weeks passed. Daniel had good news one evening. An opportunity, the kind he would normally rush to share with Mira first. His fingers hovered over his phone, muscle memory already dialing her number. It rang. Once. Twice. Then voicemail. He frowned. Tried again later. Same result. When she finally called back hours later, her voice was calm. Steady. Almost distant. That's great news, Daniel, she said after he explained. I'm happy for you. Happy. Not excited. Not emotional. Just happy. You sound busy, he said. I am, she replied. But that's good. He didn't ask with what. For the first time, Mira had a life he was not the center of. She poured herself into work, into friendships she had neglected, into becoming a woman whose happiness did not orbit around one person. It was not easy. Some nights, grief returned quietly, asking to be acknowledged. But she did not go back. She had loved Daniel for years without being chosen. She would not do it again. Daniel began to feel her absence in small, inconvenient ways. When something funny happened and he reached for his phone, then stopped. When he needed reassurance and realized he didn't know who else to ask. When silence followed his achievements. He missed being understood without explaining. He missed her. But he told himself missing someone didn't mean loving them. They ran into each other one afternoon at a cafe they used to frequent. Mira looked different, not in appearance, though she seemed lighter, but in posture. In presence. She stood straighter, spoke with certainty, smiled without checking his reaction. They talked like acquaintances pretending to be old friends. I didn't know you still came here, Daniel said. I don't, Mira replied. Just today. Of course. When they parted, Daniel watched her walk away and felt something unfamiliar press against his chest. Discomfort. Loss. Something close to regret, but not yet. That night, Daniel lay awake replaying moments he once dismissed. Her silence when he talked about avoiding relationships. Her smile when she agreed with him. Her patience when he chose everything else first. For the first time, a thought crossed his mind uninvited. What did I overlook? He pushed it away. Still, the space she left behind did not fill itself. And somewhere, quietly, the idea began to form. That maybe the love he rejected had been teaching him how to love all along. If only he knew. Daniel Adebayo had always believed clarity was his strength. He was the kind of man who made decisions quickly, trusted his instincts, and rarely looked back. Hesitation felt like weakness to him. Regret felt unnecessary. Until Mira Lawson was no longer within reach. Her absence did not arrive loudly. It settled into his life like dust, fine, invisible, gathering slowly until everything felt different. He noticed it in the mornings first. There was no message waiting for him. No gentle reminder to eat, no quiet encouragement before meetings. Mira used to remember the small things, the kind people only notice when they stop happening. Daniel told himself he didn't need that kind of care. Yet his days felt oddly unfinished. Mira, meanwhile, was learning how to exist without translating her feelings into silence. She woke earlier now, took long walks, said yes to invitations she once declined because Daniel might need her. She was rediscovering herself in pieces, some painful, some beautiful. At work, her confidence surprised even her. She spoke up, took space, let herself be seen, and slowly, people noticed. Compliments followed, opportunities opened. She smiled more easily, not because she was happy all the time, but because she was finally honest with herself. She still loved Daniel, but she loved herself enough not to return to waiting. Daniel began to dream of her. Nothing dramatic, just ordinary moments, her laugh in a crowded room, her voice calling his name, her presence beside him as if she had never left. He woke unsettled. At first, he tried distraction. Dates that went nowhere, conversations that felt shallow. He compared every woman to Mira without meaning to, and resented them for not being her. She's just a friend, he told himself. But friends didn't leave this kind of quiet behind. They crossed paths again at a mutual friends gathering. Mira arrived late. Daniel noticed immediately. She looked comfortable in her skin, unburdened. When she laughed, it wasn't for him. He watched from across the room, realizing something uncomfortable. She no longer belonged to his world by default. When he finally approached her, the conversation was polite, easy, and completely unremarkable. That hurt more than anger would have. "You seem well," he said. "I am," she replied simply. No explanations, no bitterness, no invitation. Later that night, Daniel sat alone, replaying their brief exchange. For the first time, he wondered if rejection had not been the end, but the beginning of losing her. Mira returned home that night feeling steadier than she expected. Seeing Daniel no longer shook her. It didn't erase the past, but it confirmed something important. She had survived loving him. She had survived letting go. And she was becoming someone who no longer needed his validation to feel whole. Daniel, however, could not escape the growing awareness. He remembered moments with new clarity. How she had listened, really listened, to him. How she had known his moods before he spoke. How she had stayed when leaving would have been easier. He wondered when love had stopped meaning fireworks and started meaning presence. And whether he had misunderstood it all along. The question haunted him as he stared at his phone one night, Myra's contact glowing on the screen. He didn't call. Not yet. Because regret, like love, takes time to fully arrive. And Daniel Adebayo was only just beginning to understand what he had lost. If only he knew. By the time he was ready, she might no longer be waiting. The moment Daniel Adebayo understood that something had changed did not come with drama. It came with a name he did not recognize. They were at a small celebration, nothing special, just friends gathered to mark another quiet milestone. Daniel arrived late, scanning the room out of habit. Then he saw Mira. She was standing near the window, laughing softly as a man beside her leaned in, familiar and unguarded. His name, Daniel learned later, was Ethan. The way Mira looked at him was not romantic. Not yet. But it was open. That was what unsettled Daniel. She had never looked at him like that. Not openly, not without restraint. With Daniel, her affection had always been careful, contained, as though she were afraid to ask for too much. Now she seemed free. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. Jealousy, sharp and uninvited. Mira noticed Daniel watching. Their eyes met briefly. She smiled, a polite, distant smile, and turned back to Ethan. That small act did more damage than rejection ever could. Ethan was kind in a way that didn't demand attention. He listened when Mira spoke, asked questions, remembered details. He did not assume her availability. He appreciated her presence as something chosen, not guaranteed. Mira felt it immediately. Not love, but possibility. And possibility felt dangerous. Daniel spent the rest of the evening distracted, responding late, laughing at the wrong moments. He tried to focus on conversations, but his attention kept drifting back to Mira and the ease with which she stood beside another man. He told himself he had no right to feel this way. That didn't stop the feeling. Later that night, Daniel replayed the scene again and again. The way Mira leaned slightly toward Ethan. The way Ethan waited for her to finish speaking. The way she didn't check the room to see if Daniel was watching. That was new and painful. For the first time, Daniel allowed himself to ask the question he had been avoiding. What if I was wrong? Mira, walking home that night, felt a strange mix of emotions. She liked Ethan's company. It was easy, uncomplicated, free of history. But Daniel's presence still lingered in the corners of her heart, not as longing, but as a reminder of who she used to be. She refused to return to that version of herself. If she was going to love again, it would be with someone who chose her without hesitation. Days passed. Ethan asked Mira out. She said yes. Not because she was over Daniel completely, but because she refused to pause her life for someone who had already said no. Daniel found out through a mutual friend. Myra's seeing someone, they said casually. Seems serious. Daniel smiled, nodded, acted supportive. Then he went home and sat in silence, the weight of realization finally settling fully in his chest. He had rejected love because he didn't recognize it when it was standing quietly in front of him. And now that love was learning how to walk away. That night, Daniel whispered words he had never said out loud before. I miss you. But Mira wasn't there to hear it. And the regret that had been forming slowly finally arrived, fully grown, undeniable, and far too late. If only he knew that love does not wait forever. Daniel Adebayo began to understand regret not as a single moment, but as a collection of missed chances replaying themselves without mercy. It followed him everywhere, in conversations where he pretended to listen, in rooms where Myra's laughter no longer belonged to him, in quiet hours when the truth arrived uninvited. He had not just rejected her confession. He had rejected years of devotion disguised as friendship. And now, that devotion had found somewhere else to go. Mira sat across from Ethan in a small restaurant, listening to him talk about nothing important. And that, she realized, was what made it matter. There was no pressure to perform. No need to anticipate his needs. No quiet fear of being too much or not enough. Ethan asked her what she wanted. The question startled her. I'm still figuring that out, she admitted. That's okay, he said easily. We can figure it out slowly. Slowly. It felt like safety. Daniel tried to reach out more often. Not directly. Not honestly. He liked her photos. Reacted to her stories. Sent casual messages that carried no weight. How are you? Hope work's going well. Mira replied kindly. Briefly. She did not offer more than was asked. It was not punishment. It was self-preservation. One evening, Daniel typed a message and stared at it for a long time. I think I made a mistake. He didn't send it. Because mistakes implied accidents. And his rejection had been a choice. Mira noticed the change in him. The way his messages lingered longer than necessary. The way his eyes searched her face when they spoke. The way his voice softened when he said her name. Once, those signs would have given her hope. Now, they made her cautious. She had learned how fragile hope could be. Ethan continued to show up. He remembered her coffee order, asked about her day, and waited for the answer. He did not disappear when she hesitated. He did not rush her when she slowed down. Mira found herself laughing freely. And that scared her. Daniel watched all of this from a distance, feeling like an observer in a life that once felt like his. He realized something painful. Mira had loved him quietly for years. Ethan was loving her intentionally. That difference mattered. One night, unable to sleep, Daniel replayed the past with brutal clarity. The rooftop confession, her steady voice, her quiet dignity as she accepted his rejection. He had mistaken her composure for resilience. He had not realized how much courage it took to walk away without bitterness. And now, he was left with words that had no place to land. Mira stood at her window that same night, city lights flickering below. She thought about Daniel, not with longing, but with understanding. He had not been cruel. He had simply not been ready. But readiness, she now understood, was not something you waited for in someone else. It was something you chose. And she was choosing herself. If only he knew. By the time he found the words, she had already learned how to live without them. Daniel Adebayo came closer to telling the truth than he ever had before. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, the kind of day that usually passed without consequence. Mira had agreed to meet him for coffee, nothing special, just two people with shared history pretending that history was harmless. She arrived on time. That alone reminded him of who she had always been. She looked calm, grounded, present in a way that made Daniel feel strangely unsettled, as if he were standing still while she moved forward. They talked about work, about mutual friends, about things that didn't matter. Daniel watched her hands as she spoke, steady, unhurried. He remembered how those hands had once folded his shirts, held his worries, offered comfort without asking for anything in return. The words gathered in his chest. I was wrong. I miss you. I think I loved you before I knew what love was. He said none of them. Instead, he asked, are you happy? Mira paused. Yes, she said. I'm learning to be. The answer hurt more than a no would have. Mira sensed the tension in him, though he tried to hide it. She recognized the look, the one that said he was standing on the edge of something important but afraid to step forward. Once, she would have leaned in, encouraged him, waited. Now, she simply allowed the silence to exist. She had learned that clarity should not require pursuit. Later that evening, Ethan called. I was thinking about you, he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. They talked easily. He told her about his day, asked about hers, laughed with her, not at her pauses or hesitations, but within them. When the call ended, Mira realized something quietly significant. She felt safe. Not excited in a way that made her heart race, but safe in a way that made her breathe easier. Daniel, alone in his apartment, finally admitted the truth to himself. He had not been afraid of love. He had been afraid of responsibility. Mira had seen him fully, believed in him, anchored him, and he had taken that for granted. Now, the cost was staring him in the face. Days later, Daniel heard news that tipped him closer to action. Mira and Ethan are getting serious, a friend mentioned casually. He's really good to her. Good. Daniel sat with that word. Good was something Mira deserved. The thought that someone else was giving it to her made something inside him break. He drafted a message late that night. I need to talk to you. Really talk. He stared at it for a long time. Then he erased it. Because he realized something devastating. He didn't want to confess because he loved her. He wanted to confess because he was afraid of losing her. And that was not the same thing. Mira stood in her room that same night, holding her phone. Daniel's name had appeared earlier, missed call. She had seen it. She had chosen not to return it. Not out of anger. Out of growth. She knew now that love should not arrive in fragments or hesitation. It should arrive with certainty. And until Daniel could offer that, she would keep walking forward. If only he knew that the moment he hesitated again, she stepped further into a life without him.